You're listening to the Homeownership podcast by Momentum Realty, real estate talk for buying, selling, and owning property.
Hey guys, Sean Patrick Maloney here, broker owner of Momentum Realty, located in Hanover, Massachusetts. Welcome to episode 3, a step-by-step guide to the home selling process. I'm your host, Sean Patrick Maloney. This week I want to talk to you about selling a home and everything that goes into it. It's really important to think about everything before you get started, because once you get started, you're about to not have a home, and you want to make sure that you're set up to go to the next place and seamlessly. First thing you want to do is decide where you're going to go next. A lot of people take this one lightly and think, I'll figure it out as I go, but I think it's really important that you figure out where you're going to head and what you actually need to do to get that done. Like if you sell a home, what's the minimum price you can take, and what's your down payment going to be like for the next home if you're going to buy a new home? If you're not going to buy a home, are you going to do rental? And what's the rental market like? What kind of budget are you going to need? These are things you're going to want to think about. The next thing you're going to do is want to decide whether you're going to use an attorney to represent you in the sale or not. I highly suggest that. It's really important to bring in the proper legal team to make sure that you're protected. You're going to be looking at a lot of contracts, and a real estate agent technically is not there to guide you through what a contract says. They're only there to read it to you and make sure that you sign it and submit it on time and correctly filled out, but they're not there to explain what the contract actually means. So having a legal representation is going to help you with the process of understanding it and protecting your rights. The next thing you're going to do is identify an agent that's going to sell your home and possibly find the new one. If you're buying and selling in the same area, same state, I would suggest using the same agent for both sides. It saves you a lot of back and forth, and it also can save a lot of frustration explaining everything twice. When you work with the same agent and they're selling and buying your home, they know when to move based on when the home's selling and where you're at in the whole process, and that way you don't have to call back and forth to the two people. If you're moving out of state, you might need your agent to help you with a referral. Don't forget that agents are a good source to find other agents. A good agent will go in and dig into the details for you and find an agent that can work with you in another area and find that dream home that you're looking to find, or find you the rental that you need. Next step is to take a look at your bank or lender and figure out what you're going to actually be pre-approved for. This one's another one that's really important before you actually put the home up for sale. You want to know what your pre-approval is. A lot of people think, well, I used to be pre-approved for this, or I got another job and I have more money, a lot of things, but there's a lot of moving parts of a life, and it's really important that you speak to somebody and get an actual pre-approval, and you talk with them about a couple different conditions. One, if you can sell for full price, and then other ones, if you do end up having to take a price break, where is your break-even point, and what number is it that you need to net off the sale of your home, because sometimes houses don't sell for the original list price. And just because an agent tells you they can get money for the house doesn't always mean that it's going to actually happen. So you got to be really careful for that. And you got to know when there's a number that you can't accept and that you need to take the home off the market if it doesn't sell. And that'll save you a lot of frustration. Because in a world where you can put only 3.5% down and buy a home, the down payment is a very small amount of money. But if you think a $20,000 price break at 3.5% down is going to make an enormous change on the purchase price. After you've figured out the right lender, this is going to help you learn what price range you're going to shop at. When you're talking with the lender, you want to talk to them about a couple different options. One would be a bridge loan. Are you able to own 2 homes at once, or do you need to sell one before you buy the next one? If you need to sell one home before you buy the next one, you're going to need to make sure that in your paperwork that you have a home sale contingency, and that if you're making offers, the home sale contingency says that the property must close before you can purchase the next property. A lot of people make mistakes and say the home needs to have an accepted offer or the home needs to have an accepted purchase and sale agreement, but this is not true. If you need the funds to close the next home, you need to make sure that you write in the paperwork that the home sale contingency is based on your home closing before the home you purchase closes. This is really important so that you don't lose your deposit when you have to back out of a deal that you signed the contract for. Again, this is another place where having legal help from an attorney is really going to close the gap on that and make sure that you have it set up right. If you're going to a rental, then you need to look at what's the available market like? What's the reality of getting a new place? Are you going to have to find temporary housing? Sometimes you might need to stay in a long-term hotel environment, similar to ones that businessmen stay in when they're in town for a month. You can look at that as a bridge gap between the two, but it's really important that when you're going to be signing the lease, if you have the extra money, maybe you want to keep both places for a month. That way there you can slowly move out of one and into the other. These are decisions that are going to need to be made before you put the home up for sale. After doing all this, it's time to meet with the real estate agent. I would suggest meeting with at least 2, if not 3 agents to talk about the property and review what they're going to do to sell your home, how they're going to market it, and get what they call a comparative market analysis. The first meeting, you're going to have to sign a form. A lot of people get nervous when they have to sign something. The state of Massachusetts has a Massachusetts mandatory agency disclosure form. That form there is to tell you about your options, that you have the option to have all different types of representation. The agent must produce this form. A lot of times agents don't like to produce this form because clients think that it's a contract. This is not a contract. This is a disclosure. This is a really important disclosure just to let you know what your rights are. Some agents will bring a market analysis on the first visit. I don't really trust this method much because how can you do a comparative market analysis and put the actual value of a home that you've never been in before? I like to do the method where we come back one day later and we meet again and we go over the valuation. It's really important to look at each and every comp and to be honest with yourself. I know it's your home, so you're going to add extra value mentally to the home, but it's really important to look at the comparables and say, geez, that home is actually nicer than my home. And be realistic about this. That way there you set a realistic price. Because again, a $20,000 price break on 3.5% down is going to drastically change your numbers. So let's not talk about price breaks. Let's talk about pricing it correctly. And if we price it correctly, there's always the possibility that more than one person will like the home and they'll want to make multiple offers, which can lead to a bidding war, which can lead to a higher value than you ever thought possible. When you overprice a home, it can lead to price reductions and then people thinking there's something wrong with the home and waterfall the price down, down, down. And that can be very painful and lead to you never selling or having to stay for longer. When you're going over the comparative market analysis, you're going to see a lot of information there. If you don't understand the information, just make sure you mention it to the agent. The agent will be happy to go over everything that's involved. But again, make sure that you don't let it get personal. Make sure you look at it as business. This is business and this is money. And the buyers are not going to look at it in the same personal way you do. They may look at it that way in the future when they go to sell the home, but in the process of buying it, in the data-rich world, these buyers are going to be highly educated and they know what else is sold in the area and they know what it's sold for. So overpricing the home isn't going to get you anywhere. Once you've finished a comparative market analysis and you've done your original interview with the agents, it's time to choose an agent. Once you choose the agent, you're going to begin the process of getting the home ready to market. You're going to remove items and set the whole place up. A lot of people call this staging. Staging can be really important. I know it's hard because it's going to change the functional value of your home, but if you're not using something or if it's just taking up space or it's making a room seem small and cluttered, it's really important to either get a storage locker, choose a place in the basement and neatly organize and stack boxes, or move items to a family member's house, or anything else you can do to make the place seem larger and also nicer for living. It may be time to get a dumpster if you have extra items that you need to get rid of. Don't forget to do everywhere because when buyers come, they're going to open the cabinets, they're going to open the doors, they're going to go in the closets, they're going to go behind the shed. So make sure you clean out those areas too. I always suggest people go in every closet and every cabinet, take everything out, and put it back in a very organized fashion. And if you don't need it over the next few months, take it out. Because if you have cabinets like most people do in the kitchen that are completely full to the top with Tupperware and things like that, that can make it look like the cabinets are too small. And then in their mind, they might think that maybe they're moving because the kitchen's too small. But this isn't a reality. The reality is that we all have too much stuff and that we stack it no matter how much space we have, whether it's 10,000 square feet or 10 square feet, we always fill it up with things. So just make sure you move it out of the way for the time being so that you can show the house being used at its best value. Once you've finished all the cleaning up and staging of the home, it's time to sign the listing agreement if you haven't already done so. While you're signing the listing agreement, you need to make a few different decisions. Number one, are you going to accept dual agency or not? Dual agency is where your agent represents both you and the buyer. I highly suggest signing a dual agency agreement, but this is up to you or your legal advice. Dual agency agreements are really important when it comes to open houses or other times where there might be an offer that the person isn't represented. If you let the person walk out the door and go get an agent and come back to write an offer, chances are they might have buyer's remorse and not even end up putting in the offer. The other thing you're going to have to do now is fill out any of the disclosures. If the house was built pre-1978, you're going to have to do a lead paint disclosure. A lead paint disclosure is to tell the buyer whether you're aware or not aware of the fact that there's lead paint in the house. It's an option to say you don't know, there's an option to say yes, and there's an option to say no. The only way to truly say no is if the house was ever tested. Typically, most of them come back as unknown because you didn't build it, you didn't paint it, and it's pre-1978, so chances are there could be, so it's most safe to say it's unknown. The other one is the seller's statement of condition. On a seller's statement of condition, some agents use them, some agents don't. Some people want to fill them out, some don't. The key here to remember is you can't lie on a seller's disclosure. And if you need to tell people about something, you should tell people about it. It's never a good idea to try to hide something. A known material defect in a home, such as water getting in the basement or mold present or structural issues, has to be disclosed. So you can't just hide it, and once you set it to your agent, it's already too late. They now need to tell a buyer. If the buyer asks, they need to let them know the truth about it. And honestly, if there's a serious issue, they should list it on the house once they've heard about it, because otherwise it can lead to legal action in the future when they find out that you hid that from them, the buyers. After you get all this done, it's time to actually go on the market. So the agent's going to go on the market by listing it with the MLS for you and putting it on other sites like Zillow and Trulia, and as well as Redfin and some other online sites. They might run newspaper ads, they might go and put it on Craigslist and a lot of other things. This is the time where it's important for you to always keep the home in showing condition. It's a terrible idea to turn down showings, and quite often people put up that they need 24-hour notice and things like that. I know it's going to be difficult, especially if you have children or you have anyone that's handicapped in the home and you have to keep the home in certain conditions, but really make sure that you keep the house ready to show right away so that you don't have to turn down any showings that you can get people in. Turning down a showing might mean a buyer goes to the next home, puts in an offer on that when they would have put in an offer on your home, but it wasn't ready when they have time. I know it's going to seem ridiculous, but most buyers call us agents somewhere between less than 12 hours before they want to see the home, and they want to get in there now. In a Google environment where we're always ready and everything's at a touch of a button, showings need to be at a touch of a button as well. People want to get in there and get in there quick, so make sure you make it available. And when your agent's showing the house, just make sure that they're making sure that the buyers are pre-approved and that they're the right people. So that way there, you make sure you're not wasting anybody's time. Once you get showings and everything and you have open houses, chances are you're going to receive an offer or many offers. When you receive the offer, you decide whether you want to work with it or not. If you receive many offers, you're going to have to determine which is the best offer. It's natural of all of us to think highest price equals best. I'm here to tell you that's wrong. There are many different options of terms on the deal. Some of them may say you have a certain amount of time to get out of the house. If you have kids and you need to find another home, some of them will be more willing to work with you. Other ones need housing right away, so therefore they're going to have short timelines. This is a big one to think about. Then you have the deposit. Some people will only be putting $1,000 down. Think about it. If you're only going to lose $1,000 to move on to the next house, how likely would it be that if you find something better that you move away from it? Whereas if you put $20,000 down, would you still be willing to walk away? That's why a deposit can be really important. Then there's some things that buyers could add in to make the offer more powerful, such as removal of the home inspection. If you don't have a home inspection and the house was built pre-1950, it may be a good idea to accept that one. This is another place where you want to talk to your legal team or your contractors and builders to find out from them. Your agent is going to help you a little bit on this, but remember, they can't give legal advice, so you always want to check in with your legal team if you have one. Once you've accepted an offer, chances are it has a home inspection. Within the next 10 days, the home inspector is going to come in the home. They're going to poke and prod the entire house, and they're going to find things wrong with it. Doesn't matter when it was built, doesn't matter where it was built, it's going to have things wrong with it. The good news is, not all those things matter. When they find these issues, they're going to give them about a 20 to 70 page report. That report's going to have everything in it. Again, though, this isn't a time to just negotiate about a light switch that doesn't work. This is a time to negotiate on major items, such as structural issues, or all the windows needing replacement, or the roof needing replacement, or anything else like that. Sometimes it's a good idea to have your agent make sure that in the process of accepting the offer, that they put in an amount that's an acceptable amount, such as, say, $5,000, where if there's not $5,000 in damages to the home during the home inspection, it's not going to be negotiable. I highly suggest adding one of these if they don't already have one in the deal. During the home inspection time frame, it's time to start drafting the purchase and sale agreement. If you're using an attorney, they're going to look at it, they're going to send it to the other attorney, they might make some changes, they'll go back and forth a few times, and then they'll tell you you're ready. Once the home inspection's done, everything's been negotiated, it's time to sign the purchase and sale agreement. When you sign the purchase and sale agreement, this is the second time you're going to need a deposit. This money is non-refundable unless there's a major issue with your banking or any other contingency that you added to get you out. But do remember, when you put this money down, it's non-refundable if you just decide you don't want the house. This is the big boy world where you can't just decide you don't want a house anymore. Once you're in the purchase and sale agreement, that money is going to be held by the seller if you walk away from it. After you have an accepted purchase and sale agreement, it's a good time to have the fire department in to do a smoke inspection. A smoke inspection is where they're going to come in, check all the smoke alarms as well as CO2 detectors and make sure they're within legal guidelines of the state. The reason we wait so long before we do this inspection is the paperwork is only good for 60 days. Keep in mind you have to bring the original certificate to the closing. This is the responsibility of the agent, but it's never a bad idea to know as a seller. After signing the purchase and sale agreement, it's pretty smooth sailing. When you're signing the purchase and sale agreement, you're going to sit back and wait. The buyer's mortgage company is going to do some research on the home, do a title search, check and make sure everything is clean, and then they're going to go through the full mortgage application, and they're going to look through the finances of the buyer, and they're going to get everything together. A few weeks from then, you're going to have an appraisal. The appraisal is a really important part of the whole process. The appraisal is when the bank sends out an appraiser, and they create what the actual value of the home is. It's crucial that this appraisal comes in at the right price. This is why overpricing a home can be dangerous, because if you overprice the home and the appraisal comes in too low, this can bounce the deal. And if it bounces the deal because of appraisal, it means the buyer is going to get the deposit back. Now you're going to have to tell everybody that, hey, I didn't sell because it didn't appraise out at the right price, so you might have to go back on the market or renegotiate with the buyer you already have, which can be catastrophic if you're already looking at next home and you made an offer based on what you were going to get as a net profit. If that changes, then you might have to leave the home that you're going to be buying, and then you have to hit the market again, or worst case scenario, you can't afford to sell and you have to come off the market after doing all this work. That is the reason that I always suggest using a highly trained agent that knows how to price a home correctly, that has a good track record of selling homes and getting what they asked for the home, or a high percentage of what they asked for the home every time. After the appraisal is in and acceptable, you're in really good shape now. The only thing left to get is a commitment letter. The commitment letter is going to come from the bank, and that's going to tell you that the bank has now committed the funds to the buyer and they're ready to close. As a seller, you got a few things that you need to take care of. You're going to need to call in a final water reading, final oil reading, final gas reading, or anything else. If you got a pile of firewood out back, you might have to call a company and have them value it. If you have an oil tank, you may have to call an oil company and have them come out and tell you how many gallons are in there. Propane, you may be calling them. On propane, remember, a lot of times people are renting the propane tanks. If you're renting the propane tank, you want to mention that to the buyer and see if they want to assume the lease. The lease usually costs no money. It just makes you have to buy the propane through the propane dealer listed on the can. If you don't plan on doing that, once you call that in, on the closing day, they're going to come down and put a padlock on the tank and lock it out from the house. So make sure you tell the buyers who the propane company is and that they deal with it ahead of the closing, so that way they don't have frozen pipes if the heat is propane, or they don't have issues not having the gas stove or any other items that are using propane within the house. If you're going to need help on the moving process, now's the time to hire a trusted moving company or have people you know help you move. Remember, don't wait till the last day to start packing boxes. Pack the entire time you're working on getting ready to sell your home. This will save you a lot of work in the long run, and it needs to be done no matter what. All you got left now to do is make sure the home is broom clean, make sure it's in good order to transfer. Don't try to get away with leaving stuff behind. And if you're going to leave anything behind, make sure you tell the other agent and say, hey, do they want the extra tiles for the floor or anything else where you think you're being a good guy? Because during the final walkthrough, which is going to happen either the day before or the day of the closing, if the buyer doesn't want an item, it can hold the whole entire process up. And sometimes you think you're being a nice person by leaving a shelf or leaving the extra paint, but maybe they don't want it, and you don't want to have to deal with it on closing day. It can become very hectic and very stressful to get in there and get a dumpster and get the stuff out, or try to figure out where in the back of your car you're going to fit something that you left behind that doesn't fit in the car. On the closing day, it's finally time to celebrate. It's time to get in there, you go to the closing. You're going to basically be sitting around the whole time as a seller. There's not nearly as much paperwork to do on the seller side versus the buyer side. There will be some signing to be done. They may need to bring checks. Make sure you check with your agent as well as your attorney whether they need any money or checks to be brought with you. But make sure you bring that fire inspection certificate. Remember, that must be the original from the town. This is also a place where you're going to bring the water bill and any other paid bills to make sure that they know that everything was closed out correctly. Once that's done, it's time to get your check. After the closing, the bank or the attorney is going to go to the registry of deeds and they're going to file the deed. Once that deed is filed and closed correctly, that's when you're going to get paid. The money will not be available until the actual property is closed with the registry of deeds because it's not sold until it's closed and registered. Keep in mind during the process of selling a home that you're going to have to pay a tax stamp. That tax stamp is $4.54 per $1,000 in the state of Massachusetts. A lot of people are shocked by this property transfer tax. Don't let it shock you. Also remember, it might be important to mention all this to your accountant for that year's taxes because there's a lot of tax information and there's going to be some taxes involved with selling the home other than this transfer tax. Now that you've sold the place you're living in, it's time to get into the new place. Maybe you've already purchased or rented a new place, but if not, now you have the funds and it's time to go. If you're thinking of buying or selling a home or buying and selling a home, make sure to reach out to one of our agents. Our team at Movementum Realty is ready to help you and guide you through this entire long process. Please make sure to follow this podcast and like us on Facebook. I look forward to talking to you next week.